Hi guys, welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. Today's session is a demonstration on remote imaging, and we're actually waiting for the host to show up in the room. So I'm going to assume that, like anything astronomy, anything can happen. If it's not clouds, it could be internet. But he's going to show up, I'm sure, eventually. And for now, I just want to get started. For our YouTube viewers, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, but remember we do this live every Sunday at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, which is actually 2:30 GMT, but that's Monday. Keep that in mind if you are not in Eastern Standard Time. It was suggested we tell you that. If you do come into our live sessions, you get to ask questions live. You can type them into Q&A or get into the room here. For our people that are in the YouTube area watching this live, remember you can just type your questions into Q&A. So this week, we might be changing things up a bit, but we do have an image that we wanted to kind of show off as one of the best that was submitted to us. And I'm not. First week we've done this, I haven't even planned on getting this, so I am going to share my screen in 1 second. But this is an image that we're choosing for, as of right now, it's our image of the week. We might come up with a different title, but congratulations to Bill McLaughlin for submitting this. Very nice image of Vandenberg 16. I don't recognize this one, so I don't think I've seen this one, but that's a beautiful image. For now, I'm going to leave that up on the screen. You guys can see it on the Google Plus page, and if you want to blow it up and take whatever, congratulate him. You're welcome to do it there. Next week, David Alt is presenting on advanced pixel math operations and insight. Oh, and I see Mike showed up. So good, right on time, Mike. And we'll see if part 2 is working out, whether his weather is working out. Whether his weather is working out, we will see. But how are you doing, Mike? Are you there? I see you're muted.
Oh.
You're muted again. Maybe these are the issues he's having. I don't know. You're still muted, Mike, but you can type into chat if for some reason that's not working. And we're just waiting for Mike to get on board because Mike is going to be demonstrating, hopefully, a live remote imaging session.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Mike. Yes.
Can you see me?
Right now, let me see. Right now, I only see your. No, I don't see your screen.
Okay, let me see. Why is it not recognizing my? Well, it's not recognizing my webcam for some reason.
Aha. You still.
I just installed this, so.
You still should be able to screen share.
Oh, there we go.
Let's see. There we go. I see you.
Okay. All right. Now, screen share is right here. Full screen. All right. And okay. All right, can you see that? Hello?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can see it. I accidentally muted myself and hid myself from the broadcast. I was able to see that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Just let me know when we're ready to get going here, and I'll get it going.
You're ready to go. Go right ahead.
All right. I figured I'd start off with a little bit of background so that, first of all, people don't think that I'm some elaborate expert, because I'm not. I did this mostly for convenience and picked it up as part of the learning process. So as you can read here, I started like most of us with in my backyard traveling with a C-Gem, which soon became a boat anchor, and a C8, and I started out with a Canon DSLR. I quickly became very frustrated with the difficulties and decided there has to be a better way. I got lucky and heard about a book from Ron Wadowski's The New CCD Astronomy and got a better mount, bought a refractor and a CCD camera. Things got much better, but I still struggled with a lot of things, including peer flips, plate solving, polar alignment, the common things almost every imager does. And since I'm looking at a full screen, anytime if there's a question or something, Adam, just let me know.
Will do.
My first major step came when I poured a concrete pier in my backyard. This was actually my third mount. My second mount was a Vixen SXD, which I still have. And then I graduated to an AP 900, which was like a godsend. But if you look at the back of that mount, you can see that I had absolutely no clue on how to wire. I think if you look, I actually have a metal bar sticking out the back to keep the wires from getting caught as I rotated. But it allowed me to image from inside the house and avoid having to set up each night. And I got to be honest, I quickly became very discouraged when my hands were freezing and I was traveling to a dark side or just trying to stay awake. And especially when I started working a lot of nights, it became almost an impossibility for me to be able to be out there and image and go to work. The last hurdle was automation. I wanted software that all I had to do was say, shoot this target. I started out with CCD Commander, which was still a pretty good program, but it required a lot of user input and of writing kind of like batch commands almost. I then learned about ACP when I was exploring Pinpoint and CCD Autopilot. I kind of looked at Autopilot at first, and I got a warning, I think, from somebody on one of the forums that you had to buy several modules. So to be honest, ACP looked cheaper because it included everything I needed. But then in playing around and comparing the two, I thought ACP probably held just a slight advantage, although I only used the trial version of Autopilot. So, I mean, I know all kinds of guys that use it, and it's just a flawless program. And also, Bob Denny gave me a level of support with ACP that I really cannot do anything but rave about. I couldn't figure a couple of things out at first. A lot of times with complicated software, you can kind of get lost. And Bob has very wisely built in Team Viewer with every one of his installs. So even if you haven't even purchased the software yet, he has a very strong support for him. But if he sees that you're struggling and he knows you've tried to read the help files and stuff, he'll actually remotely log onto your system and see how everything's set up and look at what you're doing and walk you through it to get you up and running, which was a major hurdle for me to overcome. So some of this stuff gets pretty complicated. What does the software allow me to do? Well, everything. I can be anywhere at any time, control my system from any place that has internet access through my phone, my iPad, my laptop. I've even been on an airplane imaging with internet access. Software creates a plan from selected targets, starts the entire system up, shuts it down, takes flats, darks, lights, monitors weather, focuses, then sends the completed files to my desktop for final processing. Tonight I'm going to demonstrate from my rented pier at Sierra Remote Observatories. It's probably one of the most premier observatories in the United States. Seeing often runs below 1 arc second, and some of the best imagers in the world are set up there, including Bill Snyder, Martin Pugh, R.J. Gabani, Martin Rusterholtz, Keith Quada. I always have trouble with his last name. And this guy is a world-renowned brain surgeon, but he's an excellent imager. Uh, Larry Van Vliet, Mel Helm, and Planewave has all of their stuff there for testing, as I think IT Scopes has a bunch of stuff set up there as well. And they're there to take advantage of the excellent seeing. What makes it so unique is there's a laminar airflow that will come up over the Sierras, and when the wind's coming in from the west, and it just clears everything out and makes the skies just crystal clear and perfect for imaging. Some of you may know I was at New Mexico Skies for a while, but unfortunately New Mexico Skies weather patterns have changed greatly in the last couple of years, and it seems the observatory is more closed than it's open, although they do have a great support staff there. Okay, all right, so much for my elaborate pinpoint demonstration. So now I'm going to go directly into my remote access site. I'm going to be remotely accessing this through TeamViewer so you can see in real time. So let me change my screen view so that you are only seeing.
And Mike, I don't want to cut you off, but we have 14 viewers out on YouTube, and I just want to remind all of those viewers that if you have a question, type it into Q&A, and we'll call it out to Mike and get it asked. So that's your opportunity to ask him any questions on what he's doing. Thank you, Mike. Looks like we lost him from the room. I wonder if he clicked the wrong X, which has been happening a lot on Chrome for a lot of people I work with. So we'll see. I'm sure he'll be right back in. But thanks for standing by. Yeah, the guy's out on YouTube, Q&A. You just click it right there. Here he is.
I got booted off when I went to switch my screen share.
Oh, that happens. Yeah, see if it comes back on. Occasionally that causes a bug of some sort. There you go. We got it.
Right. So you should be seeing my remote desktop and ACP. All right, so the first part of the automation process is actually what we call a startup script. So all this is doing is I have a remote power control setup that will turn everything on, start all the software, get everything up and running, and this will happen automatically. I can do this within a plan, or I can have it pre-set up to run automatically every time when the roof is open and the weather conditions are correct. So I can just open that script, and all this is doing is taking advantage of the built-in features of Maxim and doing it just as if you had typed it all yourself, because Maxim is completely scriptable. All right, so I can run that. Now it's going to check to make sure everything is powered on, which it did because it already was. Now it's going to start all the support programs. I'll kind of try to go back here so you can see what it's doing. Starting Focus Max, turning on the camera. Now it's actually homing the mount currently. So part of the procedure is that so the mount knows where it's at when it first starts up. It goes through a homing process, and once the mount is homed and it's found its two encoders, then the telescope will connect. Should make sure it's homing. Finding home, yeah, okay. That was the delay. Wanted to make sure. And then it's actually going to turn. Now see the telescope is now connected. Now the camera's connected. Now it's going to turn the cooler on to a preset temperature, and the observatory startup is complete and it's ready to go. Now, normally what I would do, we can do things from two different ways. We can do a web-based application, this is the same thing that I see on my phone or my iPad, where I can, if I've pre-created a plan, I can load it in here, or I can just tell it I want a color series, and I can type in the target, tell it to find its RA and DEC, tell it how much of what do I want, and it will automatically take those. There's also several utility tasks that it will do, everything from focusing to calibrating your auto guider for Maxim, set your filter offset, focus offsets for ACP, a lot of simple things. Additionally, we have what's called schedule browser. This is where I can turn around and have objects pre-planned out a year, 2 years in advance and set it to run. It will automatically image those objects at the correct time based on the parameters that I've installed, but we'll go into that a little bit later. So I kind of do this the old-fashioned way. Bob likes me to use the web interface, but since I started using it the other way, I kind of stick with that, so we'll minimize that for now. So one of the first things that I may do in a plan, let's go into Planner. So let's create a plan. All right. So we want to find a target. We've got two different ways. If we know our target, we can enter it here, or, well, I can't go into SkyX Capture now because I've already connected the mount. Normally I can press the SkyX Capture, and it will tell me to click on an image, or what it is that I want to click on, and click here and then add the object from the sky after I've done that, and it will automatically add it to my plan. So let's say, like, I've got a new plan. So let me think of what's a good target that's up right now. Let me see. See, is M31 up? Let's see. Yep, M31 is nice and high, so that'll be a good one. So we'll get out of here, and I'm just simply going to add a target. Add a new target, M31. Now also, if I click on it in here, I can also create a field of view and move that around. If I had a rotator, it would show my rotator in the guide stars, and I can actually turn that so that it will add that position angle to the imaging automatically, so that's what I'm going to be looking at, so that I don't have any trouble finding a guide star in the off-axis guider. In my particular case, I don't use an off-axis guider, but if I did, that would be a key thing. All right, so I can either choose to do it from an existing image where it's going to record the RA and DEC so that I can exactly go back to the same place, or I can look it up, and all the major catalogs are in here. I can tell it to search. Yep, there's M31. Boom, okay. And it says, when do you want to start? It's automatically going to start at 10 minutes from now. So we'll just say, okay, we're going to start it there, and it's warning me. All right, and then it says, what do you want? Let's say I can preset all of this up, but I don't want to shoot M31 for nearly that long because I'll have blown out cores. So I change my exposure time. And then I can add another new target, and it will automatically come forward. Oh, forgot to save it. Update it. So this is telling me that it's going to automatically finish at 2102. Now it knows how long it takes to focus, how long it takes to slew, everything. That's all calculated into this time. It's going to dither, do all kinds of things. All right, add another target. Let's say I want to add M78, which I happen to be imaging right now. So I'm going to pull it up from an image instead. And in my downloaded files, I'm going to pull up my last time I shot M78. And it automatically loads my coordinates in there so that I have exactly the same view as what I had originally. And tell it OK, apply, because I'm going to just automatically do this. And then I'm going to tell it I want to save it. File, save plan as, and I can name it whatever I want. In this case, I typically use the date. And I'll tell it to save it. And I can do, like I said, all of this within a web browser atmosphere as well. Any comments? No. And if I want flats, dusk or dawn, it's going to automatically add those. And then it says, are you ready to image? And I said, yes. Okay, go ahead and start my plan. And then I can minimize this out. And it's going to sit there and wait for the time for it to start. Now, we've got 8 minutes, so I couldn't show you automated flat processing because it's already too dark. So I did it a little bit earlier and recorded it. This is a procedure where it's going through and it's going to automatically shoot sky flats for me. What it's going to do is it's going to go towards the zenith. It's going to start look for areas without any stars in them, and then it will start measuring small pieces of brightness levels until it gets to the preset level that I have set, which is between 28,000 ADU and 31,000 ADU, I think is what I have it set at. So you'll see this as the automated process. So I'm going to bring up ACP here so you can see actually what's going on. It's starting, and then I'll show you it's going to slew to the area in the sky. It's automatically adjusting my focus offset for HA so that my dust donuts are going to be the correct size to flat out correctly. And this is just showing you how it's automatically slewing to the towards the zenith in the sky. And it also knows what time to do this based on the roof opening and predetermined clocks and stuff within the program. So now it's going to start taking samples and measuring the background ADUs. It says, oh, that exposure isn't long enough. So now it's going to start scaling the exposures. It finds that right at 6.64 seconds, it's close to the ADU, so it's going to scale it slightly. Oh, that's too much. Now it'll back off. And it's also calculating in that the sun is going down at the exact same time. So right now it's taking an HA flat at 6.72 seconds. And it's going to measure that again. And if it doesn't come out to the right ADU background, it'll redo it. There's the flat. Now it's going on to the next flat. And it will take however many I have it set to take. I typically try to get 20 flats per filter. And the telescope is actually moving to different places in the sky so that you can get an average of the brightness, so that if you happen to have something that slightly is passing over a light cloud or something like that, the idea is to get an average of the whole sky, of the sky in different places. It'll then take those flats, it'll download them, it's automatically downloading them to me, and then I'll turn around and take that into PixInsight later. Oh, I forgot to turn on my thermal control system. And so now we are sitting at the point of waiting for the plan to start. Let's see, we still have another 2 minutes. So let's look at the schedule browser real quickly. I can turn on what's called ACP Scheduler. This will automatically start and stop whatever I have enabled based on weather conditions. This is all pre-planned out to shoot this, and then I can set my constraints here, and it will automatically determine when is the best time to shoot it. So for example, in blue, I don't want to shoot, my sky condition needs to be better than fair. I can tell it to avoid the moon, or I can set angles, how far away it needs to be away from the moon. I can also set my horizon. How high do I want it to be? Well, I don't ever want to shoot blue below 40 degrees in altitude, so it will never shoot it before 40 degrees. So it will go through these one by one, and as it finishes them, well, these are all disabled, that's why you have a little check there. Now, if during the course of the night, this is tied into a weather server. So if I have the weather server running here, and it's telling me that the roof is open, that it's safe, and that scheduler will read that from the weather information in ACP. It will automatically start everything up. If this closes for some reason, or the sky condition changes so that it's no longer suitable for imaging, it will automatically stop, shut down, and go to sleep and wait for those conditions to change. And then once they do, then it will start imaging all over again. So that makes it fairly nice as far as being able to sleep at night to do everything that you want. This just means that it's sitting here waiting to image when those conditions are right. I currently do not have scheduler, the dispatcher running. If I did, because that would interfere with what we're doing here. Okay, show me the screen. All right, so this is my dispatcher. If I just click this one button, everything becomes automatic. I don't have to do anything. I could technically leave the system, go for 2 or 3 weeks, and it will just hammer away, shut down when it's supposed to, start up when it's supposed to, take flats when it's supposed to, and continue to gather images like I want. All right, but we're not using scheduler tonight. All right, so now we're going to go through the automated process so you can see what's going to happen. So first we're going to slew to the target. I think we picked M31, right? Yeah. Can everybody still hear me?
Yes, Mike, we can. And we actually do have 2 questions.
Okay.
One of them from Sean is, are encoders required for remote imaging, or can you use plate solving like Elbrus or Astro Tortilla? And you're welcome to answer that.
Well, it depends what you mean by remote imaging. If it's in your backyard, I would say no. But if you've got an observatory that's 100 miles away, it's probably a good idea to use a mount with encoders, because if the mount, well, ACP, I take that back. ACP now has a feature that's called All Sky Plate Solve. He actually worked with them to save that, and that's a built-in feature in ACP. So if your scope becomes lost now, it will automatically, if you have it set up to do so in ACP, it will find out where it's at and resync your mount. So it's not as much as it used to be. All right, so we're going into our autofocus here. So let me bring up Focus Max so that people can see what it's doing. It's automatically slewing to the correct magnitude star, so that it's not oversaturated and it gets a correct reading. In this case, I have it set to slew to a star that's in a 6 to 7 magnitude. It's always going to focus in luminance. And then it's going to use offsets based on which filter I'm using to adjust the focus stepwise to make sure that I'm in the critical focus zone. So it's taking a whole series of samples here to achieve the proper focus. And it plate solved, by the way, we didn't see that, but it actually plate solved to make sure that that star was centered where it was supposed to be. Because you don't want your focus start, I'd be too far off the chip. It's best if it's in the center. It knows it's getting close. And so seeing still isn't that great tonight, or I would have gotten closer to the 3 to 4 range. So we've had a problem the last few nights. Right now it's going to take another image to plate solve after it's moved to the target, which in this case we should see M31 come up. And there she is. Now it didn't quite center it, so it's going to recenter it. See where it says re-slew to target? It determined the pointing error. Now it's taking the auto guider image, subtracting the dark from it. And I think it's saying, whoa, okay. This is not actually what it's going to image because it's been pre-centered. This was the pre-image. So, and now the guider is going to go through it's going to measure to make sure that it's guiding correctly. Oh, wrong thing. So it's taking a series of cycles and measuring how far off it is. I have to be under 1 pixel for 5 shots in a row before it will start guiding. So it said good. Now the image is, the light is starting to image now. If you look over here, we're at 10 seconds of the 5-minute shot. So while it's doing that, the other question, back to the, do you need to have a mount with homing? You know, if you have a good quality mount, I don't think it's such, but you just have to have a backup plan that if something happens with the mount, if you crash it into the pier and you can't get it to reset itself somehow, then you've got to have somebody that's able to move it for you. In my case, with homing, that's never an issue. In the very beginning, I'll tell you a story that's kind of funny. I originally moved my AP900 to New Mexico skies, and they would never allow an AP mount unless it was a 3600 in the past because they did not have homing. And I said, oh, I convinced them this is not going to be a problem because, you know, my mount's never gotten lost. I just park it back to the park position, and I've never once had a problem. And they said, well, so he finally took it upon himself and agreed to let me bring it out because they didn't want to have to keep going down to the buildings and fixing it and doing all of this stuff. And I kept crashing and it kept getting lost and I kept getting frustrated and I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. And that's when Bob actually really pushed hard to get all sky plate solving and worked with the people that were running that via the internet to be able to work that into his program. But come to find out, it was, as most things in astro imaging, it was operator error. There was one box, and I was used to having the mount in my backyard, and you don't think about it because you physically go out and shut it down or whatever. Well, in this case, there was a box that said that when you powered it up, it was going to either track or not track. And I had it set to automatically start tracking, even though I wasn't connected to ACP or anything, because, you know, if I left the mount on. And so that's why I was actually crashing it into the pier. And then talking to AP, I learned that if I just simply checked that box, when I started the mount up, it would not start tracking. It would stay where it was at, but I didn't quite realize that. One of those things you learn in the very beginning.
Good to know about that box. Is that only in ACP or is that in the AP ASCOM driver?
That's in the AP driver. That may have changed. That's been several years now. ACP will automatically turn tracking off. As soon as you connect it to the mount, it will not track. And if you have a park position like with an AP mount, it will automatically move it to that park position so that the mount's ready to be, well, it doesn't lose its sync. You can resync it if you need to. You can actually use, ACP has a pointing model built into it. It will create its own pointing model for you if you want, and it will resync the mount every time it slews and add it to the pointing model if you want. You can't use that with a Paramount. It would screw up the Paramount's built-in pointing model system. But with any other type of mount, I'm pretty sure you can. As long as the mount doesn't lose its sync position when you shut it, when you power it down.
Tim is asking whether you have a camera so you can see your telescope or mount in real time.
Well, actually, their website does. They've actually come out with some really good cameras. But if you want to see my mount right now, I can go into, see, it seems bad in the beginning. It's supposed to get better though. This is actually my clear sky chart. It started to get better. But they actually have cameras. This is my mount right over here. You can see it from that side. Oh, there's one of the techs up there working. And this is my telescope right here. I can see it from the other side. But I did try putting a webcam on when I had it in New Mexico, but I didn't have the right kind. You have to have one that's really low light sensitive. Okay, so here's our images completed and downloaded. Our first shot of M31. And as I told you, that pre-shot is not what it really looks like, because it actually, there's our last image. Right here, this is what we just shot. And everybody can tell that's M31, obviously. It's perfectly centered, and right now it's busy downloading that image to my, well, it's already at my house. It just downloaded that image via to my Dropbox, and it's just been added to my folder for my use to work on later. Okay, I think I had said something about I was going to show people how to tell if your scene was bad. Well, one of the things that I like to do is, one, I can tell by focus, but I can also tell by my guide scar. If I blow this baby up, now most guiding algorithms are using what's called the centroid. It's looking at the center. Now this star is not bouncing very much at all. It's pretty much, the white area is staying pretty much the same. If my scene was bad, like in the image I posted the other day where it was just atrocious, this star at this scale will distort like crazy. You'll see it blow up, shrink, blow up, shrink, and that's all the effects of atmospheric distortion that are causing that. If the skies are clear and steady, that star is going to stay clear and steady. Now it might move slightly from a mount error or something like that, but it's roughly going to stay in the same size as it is now. That's a pretty darn good indicator between focus and what my guide star looks like. I can tell pretty much what the transparency is, and if I'm going to get a good image or I'm not going to get a good image. And that's one of those things. If you didn't see my post on that, it makes a huge difference in the level of detail that you're able to achieve based on resolution in the image. Guiding is extremely simple in Maxim once you learn how. Now this is where the guiding actually stopped, and this is set at a scale of 0.5 pixels. So from here to here is a full pixel, a half up here, half down here. That's how much the guide star is actually moving, and then the corrections are there. If you've never learned how to guide a maxim, it's very simple. Pretty much the default settings work. Um, if you go in and you simply, the only thing I ever recommend changing is you change your COM time or your cal time here. That's pretty much about the only thing you have to change to get what's called an L. It's going to move the mount in 4 different directions and then determine which way the mount moves. So once you have those cal times set so that you get an L, you slew to a star in the eastern horizon, about midpoint above the horizon. You click expose, it takes a picture, it will choose a star for you, or you can click on a star, you click on calibrate, hit start, it will make that nice little L, and then you're done. Then the only other settings you ever really need to mess with is your aggressiveness. And what I say is, I tell people that you look at your graph, if you see a big sawtooth pattern here where it's overcorrecting, undercorrecting, overcorrecting, well, first of all, is your seeing bad or good? If your seeing's bad, then it's not going to be a very good indicator. But if your seeing's pretty steady, then you shouldn't have much movement in here. And you just fine tune your aggressiveness settings till you get a pretty flat graph. And this would be considered a pretty flat graph. Most of the time you measure in one pixel movement. So as you can see on a 1 pixel movement, this thing is hardly moving at all. And that's how you get nice round stars and good detail and data in the image, is through good guiding. You only have to calibrate once. Then on a permanent setup, well, even when I was taking it up and down, as long as I don't change equipment, you never have to do that again. I think I probably haven't done this since October when I installed this setup there. It's kind of a set it and forget it, and once you got it dialed in, you got it dialed in. So we're getting ready to finish our second image here now.
Mike, there actually are some questions coming in from Q&A, and I just wanted to, I'll go through them. One of them, have you ever tried anything besides ACP?
Yes, I tried CCD Commander, and I tried CCD Autopilot for only like a week on CCD Autopilot. CCD Commander I used for about 6 months, but I could never get the pure flip right. Whereas ACP just automatically flips the pure for me. I don't have to do anything. It stops it when it gets to the meridian, waits till you pass the meridian, and then it flips them out, and then starts imaging all over again, right where you left off.
And the other question is, when it does a plate solve and tries to center the object, does it calculate the coordinates and send an absolute move to the mount, or is it doing a relative move, X in RA and Y in DEC?
That's probably a little bit more technical than what I know, but I know it's actually slewing the mount. So let's see what it's saying. It's going to send actual movements to the mount. It's going to measure the angle that it's off. All right, so in this case, it measured it. Well, I gotta wait for it to get to it. It's going to keep moving on me. So I can see this actually will log everything. All right, so start imaging, baby, so I can see here.
And while you're doing that, do you have PEC and ProTrack turned on?
Yes. So this is, I just redid my pointing model. This is my pointing error based on my model of 450 points. My pointing error is 8.9 arc seconds. And then ProTrack, oh, I didn't turn it on. It should be, because I have a PEC curve plugged into it. This is not where you put the PEC curve, though. The PEC curve is done in BIS TCS, I think.
Yeah, there was a discussion on cloudy nights, and I heard that it does send an absolute move to the mount because I'm trying to think of what the rationale for that was, but I think it was incompatible with SGP somehow because of the sync command. The sync command corrupts the T-point model.
Yeah, it's well, the SkyX has the ability to plate solve now. It didn't before, but with the latest version, they're trying to become an all-in-one software package. There's still some things with it that I haven't tried. I'm not 100% sure with, but ACP is used by professional observatories all over the world, especially Scheduler. That's the way that they do their imaging. You plan stuff in advance. You don't do it on the fly like we often do. Let's see, what did it say my error? Oh, I went past it. All right, so it measured my last image at full width half mask, still isn't great. All right, so it took another image and it says it's already within the max error of tolerance, no recenter is needed. And then it's checking to make sure that it doesn't need to flip, that it's, that I'm gonna go past the meridian, because I actually don't have it set on to go past the meridian. I could, but I guess I just don't, because the Paramount will go, I think, 2 hours past. So in the last plate solve, my pointing error was 0.12 arc minutes. So it's going to get it extremely close. I've never had a time where it did not center the image. And I think if you looked at the very first time it centered, it was it was down and to the left, I think. And this time, when it took the plate solve, it was right in the center. It didn't move.
Eric is asking what you think about using ACP with a mount on your deck, and also what the cost of Sierra Remote is.
Sierra Remote, there's several options, and you probably really need to contact them. I know there's a lot of guys that partner. There was a story, I think, in Astronomy Technology or something, where like 6 guys got together and they figured out the cost was something like a few $100 a year for each of them, and then they just shared their data. I think sharing data, if you can agree on targets, is probably the better way to go, rather than trying to pick nights, because then it can get a little more hairy. Bill Snyder actually shares with Martin Pugh. They share the same setup. So that's pretty common, because it can get, and if you had your own individual building, I never even investigated at Sierra Remote, but I know at New Mexico Skies, if you had your own individual pod, it was like $1,500 a month or something. It was pretty high. Inside of a group building isn't nearly that high, but a lot of it can depend where you're at in the building, because if you're up against the wall, and you've got less, maybe restricted visibility, or the size of your equipment, and you require a prime spot. So that's really something I would suggest discussing directly with them. But I think partnerships is probably the best way to go to keep the cost under control. To be perfectly honest, after doing it in my backyard and doing it, hauling stuff out, I could probably, if I had to go back to tearing down and setting up, I would probably give up imaging, because it's just, when you can have a system that, as soon as it's dark, you're ready to fly, you know, when everything is done for you, it really kind of spoils you. And I feel very fortunate. But yeah, in answer to the question about the deck, yes, I mean, if that one picture you saw in my PowerPoint, I had a house kind of out in the country a little bit, not great skies, but darker than being in town. And I actually left my mount set sitting up at that location, and I would pull the telescope off and bring in the camera and bring it in. But then the mount, that way the mount never lost its polar alignment or its positioning. And then I would cover the mount up with a telegizmos cover and secure it all down so that no water or moisture could get on it. But yeah, I could do everything from my living room, bedroom, wherever I wanted. And the concrete pier was extremely inexpensive to pour. I had a guy that I actually on cloudy nights that told me about how to do it. You know, just took a hole digger and went down about 4 or 5 feet. Went to Lowe's, bought what's called I think a sono tube. It's just a round tube. Stuck it in the hole, put some rebar in it, leveled it out, and then left some bolts for the correct pattern for the mounting plate up above, and let the concrete dry for a week. Set the mount on it, and I had a permanent installation that probably cost me less than $100 to set up.
It's a rite of passage, an Astro Imager's rite of passage, right? Concrete pier.
Yeah.
Doing it yourself, I should
Very
say.
stable.
Yeah. Very solid.
And when you look at something like the bisque pier that I bought, which was $800.
Yep. As long as you don't break your back carrying the concrete.
Yeah. You buy 40-pound sacks.
Yeah.
So yeah, remote imaging, even if I would say, or automation, and you don't have to buy ACP. I mean, a lot of people are having pretty good luck with SGP. I mean, it's got some limitations, but nothing that people can't get over. But automation just makes the whole process so simple, even from polar alignment. You know, I used initially PemPro. Now I use the new SkyX version, the accurate polar alignment, as they say, but it wasn't that much different actually in accuracy than what PemPro was. But that was one of the things I really struggled a lot with at first, because I always thought that I had it properly polar aligned using the polar scope. And I got to tell you, when I had a computerized drift alignment with PemPro, it showed me that I wasn't nearly as good as what I thought, to be point blank frank. Just because I see the star in a polar scope and I'm lining it up to a certain point doesn't necessarily mean that I have everything right. And automation really will dial that in for you. With the SkyX's new quick polar alignment, you can actually in the field, that is what it's designed for. You can actually get the polar alignment done in less than probably 10 minutes and be right on the money. With the demonstration I saw at the Paramount conference. If yeah, that was in Borrego, no, not Borrego Springs, but out in where the heck that was. Anyway,
Goat Mountain Astronomical Research Station, Michael.
Sorry, Alex.
Goat Mountain.
You saw how
Goat Mountain
worked. For field alignment, that thing was a beauty.
My question from Tolga, what version of ACP are you using?
I think 7.2.
And then Josh is asking, how do you polar align remotely?
I don't. I drove to the observatory and did it. I actually only live about an hour and a half from the observatory up in the Sierras. I'm lucky there. But like the tech that you saw there earlier with the motorcycle, his name is Sam, real great kid. He's learning quite a bit. If I've had a couple of minor issues, and I just tell them, hey, can you go check this, go check that. And actually on polar alignment, at one point I thought it was saying, when I did my first T-point model, it said to move this so many ticks, this so many ticks. And so he stood there and moved it for me. Then I did another model and checked the accuracy of it. So a professional, not professional, but a observatory like that where you're paying rent to and stuff, they will usually have somebody that can help you in that regard. They're not going to, you know, diagnose. Obviously, they don't know every system and every telescope, and they can't diagnose everything, but they can do an awful lot. But I set my system all up myself, and that was evident in a couple of problems as when I had to take my mount with me down to that show that Alex is talking about, because I ran the cables through the mount incorrectly and caused myself a bit of damage.
Yeah, I think I think my question for you is, what goes wrong when you're operating remotely? What have you had happen that
There's stuff that you never think about. I think I talked about, crashing my own pier. That was no fun, and having to deal with that because you're not actually looking at it. I've had power cords come out, but that was mostly because of the way I hooked everything up, where I just overlooked something. I think I would say that once you have everything dialed in, any install is going to have bugs, but once you have things dialed in, you're dialed in, and it's pretty much, I don't think hardly anything ever goes wrong. I mean, you've got guys at like SRO and stuff that are in Europe. So once that system is set up properly and running properly, unless your camera died or something like that, it's pretty rare for too much to happen. It's just getting over that initial hump of getting it set up correctly. At New Mexico, that was easy. They had a team that's been doing it for years. SRO, they don't quite have that level of support, but they don't necessarily need it, because once you have it up and running and you've got everything set up, there's really very little that can go wrong. I mean, unless you have some sort of mechanical failure. But once everything is tracking correctly, the mount parks correctly, automation is going to take care of everything else. And I just really haven't had that many other issues. Pretty much I mean, if anything, sometimes it's stupid stuff like, again, back to operator error. Even in New Mexico, they didn't tighten down my adapter for my camera, and over time it had worked itself loose and I lost correct back focus. Silly things like that. Mostly human error, but once the setup's done right, it's usually just a no-brainer.
and you're finding their weather to be very good?
Yeah, I'm very well. New Mexico was good, but not to the level of Sierra Remote. Sierra Remote is it was New Mexico probably was closer between 1 and 1.5, and at Sierra Remote I've already seen several nights below 1. The other night I think it was like 0.88 in my focus. I mean, oh my God, and the clarity, the tightness of everything was just ungodly at that seeing. This is actually the bad season at Sierra Remote. Winter is when they get the most moisture and the most problems. Probably the biggest problem I've had at Sierra Remote is if the humidity gets too high, they keep the roof closed, or otherwise all of your equipment would become covered with dew, I learned. And that's not a good thing for electronics. New Mexico is just clouds, 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 clouds. Their weather patterns have just changed dramatically. In the summer months, I mean, from spring to fall at Sierra Remote, the amount of 1 arc second or below imaging nights is unreal. do have a little more sky glow because it's I think only about 60 miles from Fresno, so there's still, you know, a little bit of sky glow off to one direction, and it's not quite as high up, but it doesn't matter if you've got the sea, and gradients are a lot easier to deal with when they're just in like one little tiny section. Now you can also set this to actually calibrate if I wanted, so that the images would come to me in a calibrated form already, where I could have the flats and darks and everything already set up in it. If I wanted to go to that trouble, I could also zip all of the files and have them sent to me in a zip format, so they took the file size would shrink quite a bit. Trying to think. Other questions?
I got one more question. At the beginning, you said it's all set up through scripts, and I think they were JavaScripts. Do you write those, or do they come with it, or how does that work?
They actually, well, you modify them. It comes with the scripts. So let's say, and then you make it to your to work for you what you need. So let's say like there's a bunch of them actually that program in that other in the web interface that will generate some of these for you. But so here you've got a sample auto flat config. Here's all of the scripts that are already written, and then for example acceleration on for your particular camera on how fast it changes time between, or how much it adjusts images based on sky darkness in your particular camera. When do you want it to start the flats? When the sun is at what elevation? You can change simple things like that. But Bob has been very good. I got to be honest, and this is where you would set your what you want your flats to expose to, how much tolerance you will allow, your minimum and max exposure. But Bob has been very good when I've had any kind of issue with this particular script. He will get on and modify it himself to work with your particular system if you're struggling with it, or other people will share scripts with you that have ACP. So like, well, on the computer, this is so this is like your main imaging program that tells ACP what to do through Maxim, and it will, I was going to show you, you'll see that, you know, Bob wrote the script initially, and then every time that he goes through and edit, you'll see his initials on it. So he's constantly modifying these things for people as he's finding, you know, new features and new things, because this will also work with dome control, weather stations, all kinds of stuff. But you see the list of revisions in that one script. So if he logs on my system, he was just on it, matter of fact, Friday, working on a particular script to help me with something, and he flies through this stuff because it's like second nature to him. Anyway, I don't understand all of the scripting, to be perfectly honest with you. These are all history of changes. There is one thing with ACP, and you know, sometimes people whine about this stuff, is that like with some other programs, you have to pay an annual fee for updates and support. But, and I think with ACP it might be like $140 a year or something like that. But for the level of support that they provide with the software, my God, it's worth it. You get all the revisions automatically, and then anytime you have a problem at all, within 24 hours, he is helping you fix it. And I just don't know of any other software that would give you that level of support, especially when most problems are operator error. To be honest, it's very rarely the program. We like to blame the program a lot of the times, but most of the time it's something I've done wrong, where I've changed something or did something. And once in a while he'll find an incompatibility bug and he'll change it to meet your particular system. Like, for example, the weather script for me, since I'm using a different weather server, he has to modify the script to match my weather server to go out and reach it. My startup script, I actually modified myself to tell it my IP address of how to turn my equipment on and off, how to power it, simple stuff like that. But the basic framework is there. And all of this stuff actually, or the vast majority of it, works in Maxim. It's all here under observatory control. But they're observatory controlled, I gotta tell you, see, you can do it all right here if you know what you're doing. And some people are smart enough to do all of this, but to be honest with you, I'm not. I really struggled with Maxim observatory control. And what ACP is, and what CCD Autopilot and CCD Commander, and the other, they're just a shell, because they know how to write the scripts to do all of this stuff, to control this program, because it's very complex from my standpoint, or I'm just slow, one of the two. I don't know. Some people just use this directly and they don't need an external program. They can do everything with this. This has actually gotten better than it used to be. It's Bob works. For those of you who don't know, Bob and Doug George, who wrote wrote Maxim, actually were the first co-creators of ASCOM. And what they were doing is, at the time, if you wanted to have a system, you had to use one company's software to control everything. So you couldn't use the brand X with brand Y, because the two wouldn't talk to each other. And so what they did is they developed the ASCOM platform to make a common platform, so that everything, no matter who the manufacturer was, they went through one driver, and then it would work with anything, so that it was universal rather than being vendor specific, and opened a whole new world for us in being able to set things up however we wanted. It's kind of like, I think a lot of the manufacturers took a lot of the car makers' approach. Well, we're going to build all of your steering control, all of your environmental controls into your stereo, so that you can't put an aftermarket stereo in, because we don't want it to work with it. We want you to buy our expensive stereo upgrade. You get the point. But so they solved a lot of that. But then, ASCOM has allowed a lot of other people to come in and write different programs and different things. And you don't have to have Maxim anymore. You don't have to have ACP. There's several other options to automate. But I would just say that automation, however you do it, is, I choose Maxim and ACP because to me it's going to be the most stable and I can rely on it, especially in a remote situation. That this thing just keeps right on ticking. If I ever have once in a while I'll have maybe a USB port conflict. That seems to be common in Windows. I don't know why. And I'll have to restart the computer to get it taken care of. But other than that, the software compatibility is always extremely good. In most anything that I want to put on here, as long as it has an ASCOM driver, it'll work. So I was going to show you guys Bob's preferred method of using the system. And so now I'm going to switch. I'm going to take this back off and switch my video screen. So I'm going to stop my screen sharing for a second. And now I'm going to go to my camera. And if you guys can see, if it's not too bright, this is the exact same thing. Everything that's going on at the remote site, I can see right on my iPad and do everything that I was just doing through TeamViewer directly on my iPad, or my phone for that matter. I can monitor everything. I can actually, there's a program in here, the Sky HD, where I can actually hook up to ACP and actually plan targets through the Sky HD. and it will interface directly with ACP. And I can point it at something and say, I want you to shoot that. It'll send it to ACP. I can start the plan, and it will run. But this is because it's all web interfaced. Again, same exact thing I can do on my phone. But you see M31 right there in the corner, or in the picture. You actually see the guide star image. You see the guiding. You see everything that's going on. I can start or stop the system. I can do whatever I want from this control panel right on my iPad.
Mike, did you say that you can use the iPad to generate the web interface to generate the scripts?
Well, a plan.
To generate the plan. So the scripts you still have to kind of somewhat populate yourself and.
Well, those are that's part of the initial setup. Once you have that set up, you're done.
Okay.
The script, maybe I didn't make it clear on the plan. So let's go back to the screen share. When we create a plan, okay. So when I'm creating my plan, in this case, whatever my plan is, my target is I can do this through the SkyX. I can tell it what I want. I can find my target, and I can do it through the SkyX plan capture, and that will import it into the plan, or I can type it in myself. I want to shoot M32, or I don't have it zoomed in far enough. But I want to shoot NGC 224. All I've got to do is copy the RA and the deck. And this is telling me what the altitude is, everything. I can advance the time. Not when the mount's running. I do that at home. I typically generate the plans at home, and then I can upload them through the web interface directly into ACP. But I'm looking at the time, I'm seeing, okay, this is going to be at this altitude from XYZ time, and that will give me so many hours of being able to shoot it. So, and then I just, when I'm adding that, in this case, I can do a copy and paste from the SkyX of the RA and deck. And if I had a off-axis guider, it would also have a place for position angle on here as well. And then I just tell it when I want to start. And then I tell it how much of what filter I want to shoot. I save it, and it automatically starts that run at the set time I tell it to. So I can do this from that web interface, or I can do it at home and upload it to ACP, and then through the web interface, I can turn around and tell it, okay, it will save all of the plans in one place, so I can tell it the plan, and I can say, okay, I don't have it set up to do it, but here's all of my plans that, like, here's the one where's the one I just created? I don't know where the heck it's at. Anyway, it will, whatever I save that plan as, then I pull that up and tell it acquire images, and it will automatically run that plan. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And actually, Bill McLaughlin over in Q&A has a bunch of actually good comments. He says, just going through them, Bob at ACP is great, super wise. He actually called him. So he's used ACP. He's moved away from ACP, it looks like, and I think he's now using Sequence Generator Pro with the Paramount. Commenting on the seeing at SRO being very good, New Mexico skies being average, and I think that's average on the very, very, very good end, because
Yeah.
I think Pennsylvania is average at best. But yeah, lots of good comments.
Yeah, a lot of people will have an issue with paying for. They think that, I mean, it's kind of like the model that Photoshop and Office and all of them are going to, where you pay a subscription fee um, rather than you buy the software once. But as I can attest to, that the level of support that you get is unrivaled. So you are getting value for that subscription. Now, you can wing it and never upgrade again and not pay it. I mean, it's not mandatory. Same with the SkyX, and you're not going to get you won't get any updates or anything once your period ends. But even the SkyX, there's no way I get the level of support that I get from ACP. No program I've ever owned in my life. So, I mean, to me, since I don't have the time, and a lot of this stuff, to be perfectly honest, can just frustrate the heck out of me. I mean, there's some guys that can, like I say, they don't need ACP or SGP or anything. If they've got Maxim, they can figure out how to use observatory control. They've got this all down pat. They don't need, I mean, they're just natural whizzes at this stuff. Me, I'm kind of a moron at it, so I like it to be as automated as possible.
The more you keep yourself out of the process, the less can go wrong, right?
Yeah, the less I can screw it up.
Exactly.
It's hard enough learning how to process.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where I would prefer to spend my time and let the image gathering happen on its own. The hardest thing I have when it comes to imaging is figuring out what I want to shoot.
Yep. Tim's asking what version of ACP it was again. I think he said 7.
7.2 or something. Let's see. I can tell you in a second. Oh, it's not going to tell me while it's running. I'm pretty sure it's 7.2 or 7.3, whatever the latest one is. He's always making improvements to it. That's another thing. He learns. Bob will solicit input from users and make changes based on those solicited requests for what people are experiencing and how to make better features and stuff. He's got kind of like a wish list, and as he finds time, he works on new coding, and about every year and a half or so, he'll come out with a major version upgrade that will add a ton more new features. For example, one of the things that people had trouble with was with the advent of so many people using narrowband filters now, that if you wanted to set your focus offsets or focus within the filter rather than use offsets, there wasn't the availability to change the magnitude of the star on what you were going to select to focus on. And so he changed the program so that you could set a different magnitude star for narrowband compared to LRGB. I mean, that's the kind of stuff he does. I mean, he just takes user input and makes changes based on what he sees. The all-sky plate solve came about within his program because I was crashing my mount, and my mount was getting lost at New Mexico skies, and Bob was looking for a solution on how to fix it. And that in turn enabled a lot of other people who didn't own Paramounts to be able to use ACP remotely, because if their mount ever became lost, they could fix it without having to run out to it. So if you can't tell, I have the utmost respect for Bob because he's bailed me out more than one time.
And of course, Paramount is still considered the ultimate in remote because of the homing feature, which APs don't have yet, I guess, and maybe the encoded ones kind of do have it, but
I think the newer AP mounts have it now. Alex says he wants me to go through the part where the program where ACP figures out the best time to take the shots according to target elevation. So yeah, I can do that remotely, Alex. Let's see. So I'll bring up the schedule browser again.
Why don't you make a few comments about the logic behind it and what kind of decisions it's making and things like that?
Well, it's looking at based on hour angles. It's the parameters that you set into it, what you want, but everything from sky condition, elevation, how far you want it to be away from the moon, if you want the moon to be totally down or not. It takes all of that into consideration in the parameters that you set up. So let's say if I wanted to do, that's the browser, but let's go into the scheduled browsing request to show you how easy it is, because I kind of skipped over that. So astro imaging under scheduled imaging. I can tell it, say in this target, I want it to shoot, and I've already entered this because I was working on it the other day. I can tell it how many total hours I want of that particular image, how much I want the exposure time to be, which filter I want it to use, what I want my binning to be, if I want it dither or not. Then I can go into my priority and constraints, and here's where I can set up the priority. If it's a hot priority and I want it to shoot, you know, I want it to shoot this first before it shoots anything else, it's going to look at that. Some people play with hour angles because they want it to be away from a certain area, east, west, because of, say, light pollution effects from that area. How high I want it to be in elevation, how many degrees and days, moon days, that say we're at, like, what are we in right now, like 6th or 7th day, something like that. And the distance in degrees, I want it to be away from the moon. The sky condition, I want it. And then this just says, do I want to make that active right away as soon as I submit it? So as soon as I hit submit request, okay, so now it's sent it to the scheduler. Now I can pick, say, the next filter, and let's say I want another, some of my stuff didn't work right, so I want another 2 hours of green. I can do it this way. Boom, it's now set. Or I can actually go into the schedule browser. If something doesn't run because of, you know, conditions were bad or something like that, and say, let's say this didn't run, I can tell it, and there'll be a thumbs down symbol here if it did not run. I can tell it to resubmit that plan, and it will be added right back into the list again. I can also, from Planner, and I didn't cover this, if I want to make a plan for a particular night, I can go into Planner, and I can actually save this as what's called an RTML, save plan as, and I switch this from ACP plans to RTML files, name it, whatever, save it, and then I can assign a project name to it, and let's say we'll just call it 1 TAC 18 TAC 15, and then what I want the sky condition to be. Okay, boom, there it is, the plan is saved. Now I can turn right around and go into the web interface again, and I can tell it to upload an RTML, and where I save that. Actually, I typically would do that. If I'm doing that, I'm going to do it from home. And there's my plan. And I can tell it to submit that directly into the browser, and it will be, if I click enable immediately, it'll be ready to run, and I'm done for the night. Did I cover that too quickly?
Now, from what I understand of this, you could put 10 or 12 or 15 different things that you want to image over the next 2 months, and it will figure out when.
Warren has a year's worth.
Pardon?
Warren has a year's worth. a year's worth of imaging in his planner. I mean, in Scheduler. And if it's not going to be above the horizon for 6 months, that will just sit there and wait until it is.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a great thing to do, especially as you see different images and you say, "Oh, I want to shoot that," but it's not going to be up again until September. Well, you can go ahead and put it in your schedule planner, and with Scheduler, and it will sit there on the side and wait until September to shoot it.
So how
Bob's not happy that I showed it the other way because he likes everybody to use the web interface.
how frequently are you switching targets per night with the way you're set up?
It all depends on conditions. I might shoot 3 or 4 different targets during the night. I typically, on average, shoot 3 to 4, I would say, so that I only capture them during certain times. But I'm getting to the point now where I'm going to start shooting narrowband early as the moon is getting more and more. Moon days are becoming greater, and the brightness of the moon is going to start affecting imaging. So I'll start switching over to narrowband here fairly quickly.
So if you're shooting 3 to 4 targets a night, you're really taking advantage of the conditions. You're really taking advantage of the program's ability to improve your images based on the conditions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I set it pretty loose because if I had a higher focal length, I would set the restrictions tighter. But since I just have a moderate focal length, I'm in PI using blink and deleting stuff. If it don't look right, it just goes in the trash. It didn't waste any time for me.
Yep.
I'm actually getting to the point where I'm having to start searching for targets now, and I'm reshooting stuff I already shot because I've got so many images that I just, it enables you, when I say that you can spend your time imaging or you can spend your time setting up.
Mm-hmm. That's how I feel with an observatory, but I still have to go out and open up the roof for now.
You just got to automate that one part.
I'm working on it.
But then you got to have cloud sensors and all weather stations so
yeah.
that it closes automatically too.
Yep.
But that's a big step, having an observatory alone. I mean, and you don't have to have an observatory. Like you saw in my image, my first observatory was a concrete post and I want to say AstroZap, not an AstroZap, Telegizmos cover.
Yeah. And Tim is asking the question, some people would say that this would be cheating in a way, that you're not actually doing the imaging. What would you say about that?
Well, that's like people processing Hubble data. I will tell you from what I've learned in the last 6 years is it's how good of an image that you can end up making has a lot more to do with your ability to learn to post-process than it ever does in gathering data. I just enabled myself to be able to spend a lot more time processing data than spending my time gathering data. I can sleep at night. I can, do what I need to do rather than being up. Well, actually, I go to work. I got to be to work in 6 hours. To me, if you want to be serious about imaging, you've got to automate, or you're going to be lucky to produce, a dozen good images a year.
Yeah, and Tim's further comment is a friend of his has said that, but it's exactly what he would like to do. And I think that's probably the case with a lot of us, where, yeah, we know how to polar align, we know how to stand out there in the cold and do all that stuff, but it'd be really nice to put the telescope where you get clear skies all the time, good quality skies, and automate it, and just have the data come in your Dropbox.
Yeah, even if you partner at, there's not too many remote observatories for public use available out there. But it's a tough business because of the expense. They just, if you think about what it costs just to run fiber optics up to the side of a mountain and to keep that data cost going, plus all the electricity, the buildings, the maintenance, it's a spendy proposition. So I don't think that they're unreasonable about their asking costs for what you're getting in return. The question is, how do you control those costs? And my suggestion in that, because a lot of people would not be able to afford it, is you find partners and you work together. Or even like Alex's place. Alex has got the greatest setup deal in the world. If you become a member of his astronomy club, I think they charge you like $500 or something. They build the building for you, which is less than $5,000. You put your own stuff up, the building becomes theirs, but then you can remotely image whenever you want out there. The skies aren't as good as they're going to be at an SRO, but and you better have a good friend that will go and fix something for you if necessary, because I don't think Alex will drive out to the observatory at a drop of a hat to take care of it.
Yeah, that's one of my main considerations when I was looking into it, especially with New Mexico Skies and their support staff. I only recently got a CCD camera, so in my mind it was, hey, will you guys walk out there and flip the switch on my DSLR? And how nuts I could drive them just by saying stuff like that.
I don't know how much longer New Mexico Skies will be in business, to be honest with you, because Mike's in his 70s now, and I'm sure he's got enough money to do whatever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
But it's his passion, so.
It's got to be a labor of love, because in this hobby, I mean, although they have government contracts, right? They have NASA and colleges and.
Oh yeah, they have a lot of universities, and and I'm seeing a lot more of that coming at SRO as well. I'll share a secret that I shouldn't probably share, but I'll say it anyway. They had a big executive to tell you how they're still in the developmental stage. They had a big executive up there, I think they said from Microsoft, and he had to go pee behind a tree or something because he didn't have a restroom up there yet. And I think that's all changed now, and they're growing quite a bit. They do have an outhouse now, and because they get college students up there, all kinds of stuff. And I think they're working towards that to gather, as they continue to build and gather more land, they're getting more and more government contracts and college universities. And I think in New Mexico they have a couple of different governments from around the world that actually have setups there. But I think that a lot of that will come to SRO as well once they become more known, because the scene is just so spectacular.
Mm-hmm. Somebody has to subsidize the amateurs, so.
Yeah, and many times they cannot go more than one night in a row. Well, I will tell you, Tim, I probably image, I would guess on average, 200 plus nights a year. I keep having to buy larger and larger hard drives because I'm up to a 6 terabyte now to store all this stuff. I don't know why I keep it all, but
never delete anything. That's a rule. Once you delete it, you realize why you need it.
Oh, I didn't tell you. One of the things that you pre-set up in ACP is how often do you want to autofocus? Because if you have, and the system is doing that right now. It's going through an autofocus routine, and it's saying, okay, at the preset time, I've got it set up, I think every 45 minutes to go through an autofocus routine. Because if you're using a mirrored system, as you go through the night, as the temperature changes, so is your focus. Now I can do this two ways. I can do it based on temperature based, or I can do it on the traditional method of measuring the star, HFD. I've never really set up the temperature base, but I heard it's probably just as accurate. And so now the system is near focus. Okay. And I think I may have mentioned I do not do individual filters. I have filter offsets set up. So I always start with focusing from luminance, mostly because it's going to be the fastest way to focus, because the exposures are the shortest. And then the offset is just going to adjust the focus position of the focuser based on that offset. And if the focus comes out too high, say there's a cloud overhead at that particular time, it will reject that focus. It'll try another time. And if it still fails, then it'll go back to the previous focus position. The guys that created this program, Focus Max, I mean, they gave it away forever. I mean, I can't imagine the days when people used to go out and manually hand focus every hour or so. For them to come up with a program to do this automatically was either out of because they got sick of doing it in the New England weather, or I'm not sure, but they were brilliant.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody else in the room or outside the room for that matter? Remember, guys, on YouTube, you guys can type your questions into Q&A. And I've seen a few. I'm going to scan down. Did Scheduler ever add support for a seeing monitor?
It's got to have some sort of reading because it's taking the data based on sky conditions, so it's got to be reading the data from that weather station to determine sky condition. So that's got to be from the seeing monitor locally, because the only place it could come from. That's a little more technical for it than I am, but I would be almost positive that it's reading the data from the weather station to determine the sky condition.
All right. Anybody else in the room have any questions? Is that pretty much the gist of your demonstration? All right.
I planned. I felt like I stuttered a bit too much, but hopefully I got through everything.
We got clear skies. It's not supposed to work that way.
Yeah, the last time when Alex watched me do this, I got lucky too.
I guess that's the benefit of the weather out there at Sierra Remote.
Yeah, we've been socked under fog for 3 weeks in the valley, and it's drove me nuts. Nice and sunny up there.
We've just had snow.
I think there's a blizzard heading your way.
Yes, there is. I'm just hoping my son off school tomorrow. Go ahead.
About 4, 5, 6 years ago at NEAF, Tim Puckett, I think it was, tried to do a demonstration, kind of just what Mike did. And he was very organized about it and everything, and he had 3 remote observatories lined up or something like that to back up his own. He goes and checks his own, and it's got bad weather. He goes to Chile, it's got bad weather. He goes 2 other places, it's got bad weather, and he can't do the demonstration that Michael was trying to do just now. So somebody in the audience gets up and says, well, let me see. He pulls out his iPhone and checks his observatory in Maine. He says, yeah, I can do this. He gets up and he does it for everybody.
Yeah, and I did it for Puckett the last time, Alex.
Yeah, you did it. You did it. Yeah, he's pretty good at getting somebody else to do that kind of stuff. He's a good guy. So,
Well, then the guys without remote observatories don't feel so bad. Um, I want to remind the YouTube viewers, we do this live every Sunday, so you're welcome to tune in. You can ask your questions live as we do it. Next week is David Alt, and he's going to be presenting on advanced PixInsight functions in pixel math, and he's got some great demonstrations, including halo removal using pixel math. Anyone else have any questions for Mike? I don't see any more. Again, Mike, I want to thank you. This was great. A lot of us are really curious as to what went into it. So now we see what you do. What's going on while you're asleep, right?
Yeah, feel free to contact me because I'm sure I skipped over a lot of stuff really fast. If anybody else runs into any questions or wants to watch me live, or I've been known to let other people use my system once in a while, very carefully. But it's sometimes I get bored. But anyway, any way I can help anybody, just let me know.
Do you have any suggestions for backyard remote imaging?
It's really, technology has changed so much. I would just say, the key is proper alignment and setup, and try to get as permanent as you possibly can be. Just don't leave your electronics outside without being covered very well.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, ACP really is for that full remote setup where you want to click and then forget about everything. And when it's in your backyard, you can treat it a little bit differently. I'm not going to say it could be a little bit less reliable, but it could be a little bit less reliable. You don't need the same stuff out of it. You can always go out there and fix stuff. But
exactly. I mean, I would say automate. It doesn't matter which way you go. If you want to go freeware and it does the job for you, it doesn't really matter.
mm-hmm. Yep. Anyone in the room have any questions that are related or unrelated to the presentation? Because this is about the time that I kick out the YouTube viewers who, guys, we appreciate you coming. I did, Bill McLaughlin, thanks for coming. I don't know if you were even here earlier, but we gave you the first image of the week. So we showed off your image. Thanks for sharing it. It was supposed to be for next week, but we decided to take it early since you volunteered. And if there's nothing else, I'm going to thank the YouTube viewers for coming, but I am going to stop the broadcast right now.